Hello and welcome to the Avrum Rosensweig Show.
Welcome to one of the internet's best podcasts, where we dive deep into the lives of the extraordinary and fascinating people who leave an indelible mark on our world. Join us as we explore their captivating stories, remarkable achievements, and unique perspectives that shape history and inspire generations. Get ready to embark on a journey through the lives of inspiring people unlike any other.
Hi, folks, and welcome to the show. My name is Avrum Rosensweig, and I want to remind all my viewers and my listeners that the reason why I do this is because there is such beauty happening around us and through us. And sometimes when there's this really thick, heavy cloud hanging over humankind, we forget about the incredible things we as humankind together and as individuals have accomplished. And I really want to remind you about the greatness that exists among us. So what I try to do is bring inspirational interviews to you so that you can learn from them, so that you can see how other people have arrived at their zone, and how you might incorporate that into your life. If you know of inspirational people whom you believe would be a wonderful interview, be in touch with me. My email is at the bottom of the screen. And I want to remind people, too, that advertising and subscribing to the podcast is available, and we can tailor that to your needs. Of course, any podcast that's worth its weight requires cash, as we do. So please feel free to be in touch with me if you're interested in advertising. And sometimes it's just a shout out to someone whom you love. As we say in Hebrew, refuah shlema, get better. We within Judaism, we celebrate what's called the Yortzeit, the first year, the second year, the third year of someone's passing. And you can dedicate my interviews and my podcast to those individuals whom we have lost, who came through our world for a short time, but a quality time. Now, within that light, I am very honored to have as my guest today, Bekha Slider, which is a great name, by the way, Bekha. Great name.
Thank you.
It is a wonderful name. She is a liberated woman. She's an ex-pastor who walked away from the ministry, religion, and unsupportive beliefs in order to find, fall in love with, and live as her true self. Bekha Slider is a speaker, a confidence coach, and a podcast host. She is widely obsessed with helping ambitious human beings find their authenticity, which I think is incredible, so they can create the life, income, and impact that they deserve, really. Bekha will help you discover transformational insights on overcoming shame, embracing your true self, and unlocking your inner wisdom, and exploring the very, very difficult questions in life that will take you to a place, really, that we can simply qualify as freedom. How are you today, Bekha?
Oh, I'm doing so good. I'm so happy to be here with you. Thank you so much. That was an amazing introduction.
Well, listen, you deserve it. I had sent you a text prior to our show, and I have so much respect for individuals who have the courage and the bravery to go through a transformation and to ask those very, very difficult questions of which I alluded to in the introduction. And you have done that. So what I would like to do within, let's say, the next hour or so is I really want to go on your trip. I want to look backwards and get into the present, and then look forward and determine exactly where you were at, what you needed to change, and how you did it. And I'm hoping that people who watch this show can incorporate that into their lives and perhaps use you as a coach as well, right?
Yeah, that sounds amazing. I'm here for it.
So let me ask you simply, where were you born?
I was born in Connecticut.
How was that? How was your upbringing?
Connecticut, I was only there just a few years, and we moved quickly. My parents, my mother was Catholic, raised Catholic. My dad was Lutheran, actually had a Lutheran minister as a father. And so I think he converted to Catholicism to marry my mother. But then they walked away from the Catholic Church and ended up getting saved in an evangelical church, as they call it, being saved. So I was very young when my parents got saved. And then got, I'm not sure exactly what happened. I'd have to hear more specifics on their story, but basically they felt like God told them to move to Virginia Beach and help start a new church. So I grew up, the majority of my youth was definitely in Virginia Beach. Yeah.
So my father was an Orthodox rabbi, and he didn't convert to anything else, but he was really, really deeply entrenched in a very, very conservative way, a very conservative lifestyle. I found it overwhelming. I found that I was being choked. So early on, and I'm sure we'll get into my story as we go as well,
Yeah.
I decided that it was time to leave that and find something that allowed me to breathe.
Mm.
Which is exactly what you did. Now, when you did that, or before you did it, were you concerned at all, or how much, with how your parents would respond to your changes?
Well, to be completely honest, I didn't grow up with a strong relationship with my parents. And then even as an adult, it wasn't bad, but it wasn't deep at all. So, in a lot of ways, my parents were not on the front of my mind in regards to my transformation because I already felt like unapproved in many ways. I already felt like not good enough for them in many ways. Um, I think you get to a place sometimes where you're just like, it still hurts no matter what, because you have this inner child that's like, why would my parents not just like be obsessed with me? Because I have children now, right? And I'm obsessed with that. Like I love them so much. I couldn't imagine not loving them as much as I do and conveying that love in the way that I do. So I think that there was a little part of me, to answer your question, like there was a little part of me that was like wondering what they would think. But I already felt like they had their judgments, especially my father. So it was going to be what it was going to be.
Well, why weren't they obsessed with you?
I don't know. And maybe they would say differently. Like there's no, here's what I think. I think that you love others to the degree you love yourself. So the reality is that the capacity of how you hold others often reflects in it's reflective of what you're doing inwardly. So when I think about the judgment that my father had toward me, even when I was young, and all the rest of my siblings, there was 5 of us. Um, I look at that now with such eyes of compassion because the reality is he didn't know how to be with himself, love himself, matter to himself. He was still trying to prove that he was enough for his own father. And so everything was about the image, everything was about proving. And when you don't know how to do that for yourself, how can you do that for others? So that's really, I think that's really what it is. Yeah, very like self-absorbed, but like in a very unhealthy way, even more so.
Where did you fit in as per the 5 siblings?
I was number 2, the first girl. So I have firstborn traits and I have middle child traits.
And what are I know middle child traits. My sister Naomi, who passed away during COVID, she was
Mm.
a lovely, lovely human being. And it was interesting. We would talk about being the middle child, and essentially what I understood was you're the youngest of the oldest, and you're the oldest of the youngest. So you're everywhere, but you're nowhere.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that you can often feel more neglected when you're in the middle because, like you just said, the firstborn often gets more, like my brother is the oldest, and he definitely received more attention, but in almost more of a negative way because it was like the expectations were even higher because he's a boy and he's the oldest. And then the baby or babies in this case, the younger two, which were a girl and boy, especially the girl got more attention in the baby way, like, oh, I gotta make sure, she's okay. And so I think that not only I had some traits of an older child because it was like I'm the firstborn girl. So and I had 2 sisters right beneath me. So I took on some of these, like, let me teach you how, let me do the things, a little bit type A certain ways. But then also like I was my parents' hardest child for sure. I
How
think so.
so? How so?
I always asked why. I didn't understand it. Nothing made sense to me. And I wanted to me, do and be who I felt was pretty reasonable, which was just more of a social butterfly. I wanted to hang out with friends more. I want to do things. I want to have fun, go to parties. And it was such a strict, controlling, as you said, the word suffocating environment. That's such a great word to describe what I felt as a kid. And so I went against the grain sneakily. I didn't want to deal with, the punishment and the consequences of talking back to my parents and of just like the constant, do anything, say anything wrong. So I would try to put on a front to them, but then I had the sneak out of the house person, right? I would be like sneaking around, lying all the time, and really I wasn't even doing a lot of wrong stuff. It was just in order to have what I would consider a pretty typical, normal preteen and teenage years.
So, what were the machinations of your mind as a youngster, um, considering the whys? Like at 5 or 6 or 7, 8 years old, sometimes I meet kids and I just adore children so much. As you were saying, obsessed is a great word. I have an 18-year-old son, and I breathe and live him. But when you
Yeah.
were little, what what how did your mind work? The question's why. Did you actually develop an understanding, have a consciousness of yourself and your surrounding at a very, very young age?
I think in some ways, but it was limited. The other thing, what I had going on was very much so society wise in my family and in the church, it was all of the authority and all of the knowledge and all of the answers are outside of you.
Mhm.
So there was never a push to go inward and to really try to figure out things on my own. So I don't know how much self-awareness I had. I just knew things didn't feel right. It would be more like a feeling inside my body. Like this feels wrong. Like, why is it so, why do we have to be so strict? Why do we have to do this? Like, it didn't make sense. I felt confused. I
Mhm.
felt conflicted because I did want to please my parents. Most kids do at a very young age. And I felt like you never knew what you were going to get, especially with my father. It was like walking on eggshells. He could come home in a good mood and 30 minutes later be in a bad mood. And so
Yeah.
I became more of a peacekeeper, right? Like, let me do and say. I learned how to chameleon so well because I really I valued freedom, but it was obvious I wasn't going to get that. So the next thing that I wanted, if I wasn't going to get freedom, was fucking peace. I just wanted peace.
Mhm.
So that became the thing where it was just like, I learned peopling very well, partly because, and maybe mainly because of that to start with.
It's a bit of a drag being a peacekeeper.
It
It's
is.
a pleaser basically,
Uh-huh.
and I can be that very, very well. But when I do it, I feel depleted.
Yeah, it's
Is that your
exhausting.
experience?
Yeah, you feel depleted and you always feel like something's off because you're out of integrity with yourself. You are literally shoving your desires, shoving what
Yeah.
feels in alignment to your soul in a box in order to appease someone else. And long term, it's not sustainable. And you're going to resent the person long term, even though short term it may make it seems like it's benefiting. You're not. And then you're enabling them to continue their manipulative, or maybe they're not even trying to be manipulative. They're just, used to getting their way, and you're enabling that versus having an assertive personality that says, okay, I respect that you want that, and like, this is where my boundaries lie. This is who
Would,
I be. This is how I show up.
would you agree with me that you can never quite shake it? Like I've seen you, I watched some of your interviews, and there were some interviewers who were great, and some who were fair, and some who were not so great, such
Hmm.
as life.
Hmm.
I don't mean to sound arrogant. I'm sorry. I just
No, I agree.
I set the standard very high for interviewing, and I found that there were times where people asked you very weird questions, and you were just very pleasant to them and very nice, and it seemed like you wanted to make them happy. Like,
Mm,
can you ever shake that, or should you?
yes,
Should you shake it?
I definitely think you should shake it. Um, it's interesting because what I found is for the most part, I can tell when I'm doing it.
Yeah.
What happens though, when it happens the most is when I'm thrown off and when I'm not expecting something and I'm like, it's on the spot very quickly. That can be times where I'm like, oh, just I go back into autopilot mode of just like go with the flow of of just kind of catering a bit. Absolutely. I think about this often because it will come up and I'll reflect back on things like whether it's an interview or anything, any interaction. And I'm like, did I want to do that? This happened actually last night with something too. It's like, did I want to do that?
Yeah.
And so I
Right.
don't use it as judgment. I just use it as a position of myself to be like, okay, that was interesting. So the next time that happens, I want to bookmark this in my mind, this type of situation. It's going to happen again with someone else. How do I want to feel? How do I want to show up? And no, to answer your question, I don't think you can ever completely shake it. I really don't, because especially if you're someone, I'm very empathic. If you're someone who actually really cares a lot about humanity, it's like that fine line of like learning how to be very true to yourself. And then it kind of like merges a little bit, right? Like I really want to be true to myself, and like I want to make sure they feel good too. And it's like, ooh, and the only way that you can get better and better at is if you have those moments afterward where you're like, ooh, I can tell
Yeah.
that it felt off for me. Like, what do I want to do in the future?
So I have meetings with
Yes.
myself. I think they're really important. As an example, I interviewed Michal Cutler, who is one of Israel's appointed individuals to fight anti-Semitism around the world. She spoke at the United Nations, and she has balls like the size of watermelons. And before I interviewed her, I was terrified because she was so powerful. So I had a meeting with myself, and I said, Avram, who do you want to be in this interview? I said, myself. Who do you want her to be? Herself. Okay, so go ahead with that and let her be yourself. You be yourself, but take stock, man. Take stock. See how you do at the end of it. So I'm on the same page as
Yeah.
you that way.
Yeah. Also, I'm just going to randomly reference here. Do you not find it ridiculously wild that we use balls to reference something super powerful and brave and badass when balls can be flicked and in so much pain? And then we reference the word pussy to be something weak when it literally births humankind. Just a side note.
Okay, so yeah, I do. But so here's what we'll do. We'll coin something new here. We'll take the word balls, we'll put it in the garbage, and we'll use the word, well, she has vulva.
I love
How's
it.
that?
I just always find the English, like the way words come about, so
Vulva.
odd. It's like, why is that the case? Yeah.
I know. And then you think about the woman having balls. No, that's not good.
No,
Not
I don't
good.
want those.
You're right. Did you find new parents over the years?
No. That's such a good question. This is why you're so good at what you do. No, here's
Yeah, thank you.
what's really the reason this brings up so much emotion for me is because um, I've always been like a leader. I've always like I feel like I've always been 2 steps ahead of the people I hang out with. I'm not saying that to pat myself on the back. That's me choosing people also who I can be a savior to, right? So there's some stuff there. But I always craved like a spiritual mother. And even from when I got into ministry at a young age, like I wanted someone who could mentor me. I craved that. I wanted someone who could teach me, who could be more like a mother to me. And I never found it because the women who I would, feel like, okay, they're 20 years older than me. They're very kind. They seem like a great human. I get to know them. And like, I was too much. Like I was too much for them to lead me. And I don't say that because they're weak or something. But when you're talking about someone leading you, someone being a parental figure to, someone being a mentor, there has to be an angle of personality that they can get on board with and they can understand. Because otherwise they're going to have me shrinking because they feel like, do you see what I'm saying? And then also, where are they in their life that I want to go, that I can look up to, even just 10% ahead of me, so that I can be like, yeah, I want to learn this area from you, this area from you. And there were several times that I thought maybe I had found like a spiritual mother, and it wasn't. The women were too timid. The women were, they were not embodying the things that I wanted. And then also some of the comments they would make to me as I got to know them was very much like, well, do things this way. It was never go back home to you, be authentically you. It was just like, so the time that I really found mentoring for myself was when I hired coaches. That is the true, honest thing. It was not until that point in my life that I actually found people who were incredible mentors to me. And then I paid for it. I'm just like, I don't care. I'll pay money for you to be my mentor because you're what I want. Like, this is what I want. And I don't want to be that person, but there are pieces of them that I'm like, yes, I want to grow that in me. I want to see this look more like this for me. Like, so yeah, that's hard because there's still so much grief there of feeling like there's a missing piece. And I'm so glad I'm giving that to my kids, as their parent. Like, I know, and they know that because their grandparents aren't really in their life, like any of them. They're very limited in their life. So they know I'm giving them something completely different than I had. But I can do all the inner work I want. That's still going to be a hole in my heart as far as I'm here on the earth. Like, it will.
I'm giving you a huge hug right now, a big bear hug.
Thank you.
Yeah, I really am, because I know exactly how you're feeling. I did find some moms and maybe a dad here and there, and they don't make up for it, but they're not your original parents. Do you like men? Like, after the stuff you went through with your dad, because you said you never found the soulful mom that you could embrace, or the surrogate mom. You didn't say a dad. Do you? What's your relationship with men?
Now it's very good. However, what happened after not finding, my dad's situation and then moving into ministry is that I
Yeah.
ended up being under leadership of very toxic men. So men who were in pastoral positions, who were people who I thought I looked up to, people who I thought, and one of them was just absolutely a heartbreaking situation. He was the first man I actually did look up to as kind of a mentor male figure, the first and only.
What happened with him, Becca?
It took several years, but what happened was I realized he was a textbook narcissist and
Yeah.
absolutely spiritually abusive and manipulative in the cruelest ways. Yeah, and so it was like something shattered in me, I think, at that point. And so I think with men, I've done a lot of like healing work around men in general, but when it comes to like men being like a mentor for me, that's a harder place for me to still go. Not that I'm not open to it, but because there's been so much damage of men who have been given access to be some form of a leader in my life, just like with I don't want to say devastating, but it feels sometimes like looking back like devastating results.
What would I not know about men as a man?
What would you not know about men? I think for men, it's probably a lot, I don't want to say harder, but there are some things hardwired in men that it makes it a lot harder for them to be more vulnerable, to be more empathic, to be more self-aware, to be more in tune with themselves and others. And that, I don't want to blanket statement that, because it's not true for every man. But when you compare men and women, I would definitely say that's a stark difference that you see. There's a lack of nurture. There's a hardwire in of like, I just need to fix the problem. I just need to do this, and I need you to listen. And like and a lot of it can be from upbringing, all sorts of things. Society doesn't help that image. Like, there's a lot of factors. So I'm not here to bash men in any way, but what is not created for women often with men is a deep place of safety. That can be anything from just in a friendship all the way to deep intimacy, right? Like, they want to have all, like, even sexually speaking, like men want to have all of this like domination in the bedroom. And like, truthfully, a lot of women would like that, but they have to know it's safe to surrender first. And the men don't know how to create safety. They don't know how to do that with their words, with their actions, with their emotions, with their emotional availability, right? It's either like harsh often and like, you know, controlling, or it's very beta. It's very like needy energy of like, oh, I want you to be my everything. And that feels suffocating to me. Like the energy of like, be my everything. I don't want to be your everything. Like, I want to be my everything. I want you to be your everything. And then we can bring complete wholeness of each other individually together and be a bonus to each other's lives. So yeah, I kind of got off a tangent on that, but yeah, I don't know. Does that answer the question?
Well, it doesn't matter. I'm all into ADHD. It's all good.
Perfect.
Go anywhere you want. You can curse, you can swear, do whatever you want. How are you raising your boy?
So sweet. He's 18. He's my second born.
He's a good kid.
Oh, he's such a good kid.
Is
I
he?
love him. Yeah, I love him so much. Straight A's. He's gonna go off to college this summer. That'll be wild.
Yeah.
Yeah. Nathan, he's always had such a tender heart. He's always had a sweet spirit and kindness. I think that the things that I've had to really help him start understanding more of is communication, how important it is with communication. So we had a 1-year relationship with a girl recently that ended 6 months ago. And, on the back end, it was like talking to him about like, okay, well, here's the points where, yes, she could have done some things differently, but where could you have shifted and who could you have shown up as a bit differently? And so just helping him understand how to come and communicate more thoroughly, and also in a way that's very neutrally charged, right? Like there's no like, it's curiosity, it's questions. It's just like, hey, this is what happened. This is how I interpreted it. Because communication in general, not just in relationships like that, but with any friendships. And I always tell all my kids this, like when I come to them and I'm correcting them, I'm like, this isn't just about me, right? I don't want this situation is, but I want this lesson to be something that you understand is valuable to the rest of your life when I'm not around. Like when you're working or you're married or you're whatever you're doing, like this is a relational lesson. And these are the most important things that you can start to be aware of. So he owns his shit. He literally will apologize. He is not afraid to cry, like sob. Like he's not afraid. He doesn't do it very often, but he's not afraid of it. He's not afraid of emotions.
With
And
you?
he's,
Will he sob with you?
what's that?
You've seen him sob. Does he do it with you?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And you sob, right?
Oh yeah. I'm a
Yeah.
crier. Yeah. I like a sad movie and I'll cry. Like I cry on the drop of a dime. And I think that I always talk with my kids about like how like crying is it's a part of being human. I don't understand. This is another why question, right? Like why as a society we make it
Yeah.
like, oh, you're weak if you cry, or you're this if you cry. Do you know that they have proven stress hormones are actually released in our tears?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Well, there we go. So like you need to cry. Yeah.
Becca, my another sister's husband was murdered in 2002. And she's a religious Jew and has 6 kids. And she couldn't pray. And someone said to her, "Do you cry?" And she said, "Of course I cry." And they said, crying is a form of prayer.
Yeah, it is. That's horrific.
I want to see what we do with silence, you and I.
I can say
When you talk to your son about communication, is it the male side of you? Is it the female side of you?
I think that it's probably a mix of both.
Yeah.
For a very long time with my kids, I felt like, I feel like I've always taken on both because I've been very good at nurturing, but then my ex-husband often expected and just kind of, expected would probably be a good word, me to take charge in regards to, children's stuff, like any of the stuff. It was just like, I did it. I took charge. And to be fair, there's problematic on both sides, right? Like I'm also enabling that by continuing to do it and, meeting that. So, it's both. And I do try to incorporate both because the reality is you need both energies of the feminine and the masculine. So I think the approach is always twofold. There needs to be enough nurture balanced with enough challenge. If you have so much nurture and not enough challenge when you're in these conversations, then it's just like, okay. And they like, oh, it feels really good. And you have to figure that out, right? You have to be intuitive as to what is needed, but it can be walk away and feel just like it can be apathetic at that point. All this nurture, but no challenge. But then if you have so much challenge and no nurture, that's what I grew up with. It's like, okay, you just feel defeated.
Yeah.
Like if I go in there and it's like, oh, you need to do this, you need this, and you get better at this, and blah, blah, blah. Like they're just like, it's not good enough energy. That's what they're leaving with, right? I'm not good enough. I'm not doing it good enough. I need to change so much. There's not, and so then they're feeling defeated. So really coming with the approach of like, no, you're like, these are all the things that are amazing. And also this one thing, it's kind of psychology. They say 3 to 1, like three positives to like 1 criticism, 1
Correct.
critiquing. It's like, I don't want to go to my kids and be like, there's 5 things you need to change. I need like, maybe there is 5 things, but the reality is their brain and they're like, no, it's like, let's do the one thing. What's the most important walk away? This is the most important like thing you can take away from this conversation. And I often will have them kind of convey back to me, how are you interpreting this? What did you hear me say? Like, how are you? Because hearing is one thing, understanding, interpreting, and like actually integrating it is a whole different thing. And so it's really trying to figure out, I don't want to just talk your head off, any of my kids, for the purpose of you hearing me speak and me feeling like, oh, I'm the parent, I'm speaking, listen to me. But that's like garbage, right? If we're going to have a hard conversation, I want it to matter and I want it to be something that's bookmarked and you walk away feeling empowered and you walk away feeling unconditionally loved.
Do you believe in the soul?
Yeah, absolutely.
Is your soul feminine with some male? And if so, what are the differences?
Yeah, I think it's a mix of both for sure. I think that the differences are just specific to the feminine and masculine energy. So the soul part of me that is the feminine is like really into allowing, receiving, trusting, surrender. And then the part of me is that the masculine energy in my soul is like, let's fucking do it. Like, let's go. We got this. But what I think is interesting is that I was always taught to lead with the masculine. It's like, get the things done, produce. And this is not just my home life when I was a kid. It can be religion, it can be societal, all of that. It was like, do the thing, prove your worth, get it done. Like,
Yeah.
not enough, measure up, there's the bar, all of that. And the reality is that it's so much more effective when you start with the feminine and then you let that lead the masculine energy. So what I mean, what that would look like for me, for example, in my work today as a coach, right? I start with meditating. I start with getting myself grounded. I start with getting my space in a head where, or my head in a space where I'm just like, yeah, I'm going to trust it's all coming. Like the outcome that I want is happening, whatever that outcome is. Getting really into that like juicy goodness of the feeling. And then from that place, I ask my intuition, ask myself, okay, what's the action to take? What's the action to take today? What are the things that I can do? Because you're like, just even saying out loud, it makes so much sense. You're going to take much more effective action
Yes.
when you've got yourself in that space first of already deciding it's a done deal, even if you don't know the how, versus, no, I'm just gonna do all the things. Well, you could be wrecking yourself, just stressing out like crazy. And you could have had it come from such a more surrendered and trusted place. Yeah.
When you were a pastor, you would stand up on what we call in the Jewish world a bima.
Yeah.
You're above everybody else, which probably is not the healthiest way to do things.
Yeah.
And you stand up there and you preach. And the premise is that you know something your flock doesn't know, right? Is that how you approached pastoring? Did you know something other people didn't know?
No, I don't think so. So when I would create sermons, I would always ask God, which I don't really use that term anymore, but I would always ask God, like, I am not preaching this unless it's real to me, unless it's integrated in my life, unless it's a real experience for me. And so a lot of the way I preach was very much like real life type sermons that really could help you integrate things that just helped your daily life in general. And it wasn't that I thought people didn't know it. I think a lot of times people know a lot of information. They don't know how to integrate it. And they also don't know how to do it from a place of love. We often try to take new ideas or even lessons that we've learned or things that we've heard, and we use them as a bat to just beat ourselves over the head in judgment of how we're not measuring up, versus like, what if you took this approach? So I think that if anything I had that other people didn't have, it wasn't so much the knowledge, it was the approach. It was the way of viewing things and personifying things or giving analogies to things that helped it click, that finally helped it click for them to be like, oh, that makes so much sense. Oh my gosh, that would be easier if I did it this way or if I understood it this. That's, I think, what my gifting would be, and making it very like layman's terms. Like literally my goal when I would preach was, if the middle school, high schoolers in the audience could not understand it, then I failed. If they don't walk away and they're like, yeah, that was cool, then I failed. Because for me, it is not about sounding pious and sounding amazing. It was about being relevant and actually having something tangible that people could be like, damn, that really, like, that inspired me. That helped me. That shifted things. That did something for me.
And did you see people change because of your words then?
Yeah.
And are you happy with how they changed then?
Yeah, I think so. I think all of the things, for the most part, that I can recall were definitely empowering. I
Yes.
never had the approach of trying to control people with my words or trying to help them change into what I wanted them to be. It was more feeling more loved by God, feeling like they could make better decisions, communicate more effectively. Even when I counseled people or couples, like that was the goal. And I had so many people come back to me and tell me how much I did empower them, how much I did help them. So I think there was definitely help. I think that I still kind of cringe over the possibility and likelihood that there were things that I said and did in my
Yes,
years of
right,
ministry
right.
that were not empowering, that had an agenda attached to them, that were driving people to that agenda instead of to themselves. And the reality is, I have actually apologized to a
Have
handful
you?
of people. Yes.
You have.
And it wasn't specific words, because I didn't remember, like, no one's ever come to me and like, you said this and it fucked me up or something like that. That's never happened. But people who I've talked to since then that were in the church, I have told them, like, because it's the way I feel, I need to apologize if there was anything I ever said that came across like I'm driving you back to this agenda of Christianity versus the reality of like your infinite value as a person. And so that played out this way. As an example, there was a couple I knew who was on the verge of divorce. They were having a lot of issues. And so, in the Christian church, God hates divorce. So that's it. God hates divorce. Okay. So, you try to help couples come back together, figure out how to communicate better, love each other better, et cetera. And of course I was doing that. But the reality was, oftentimes the agenda of making sure they stayed married could be held higher than the agenda of what is in alignment for your soul. People change. Like, I think it's outrageous to think that the God of the universe, who's supposed to be unconditional love, would hold this pedestal of marriage, this contract of marriage, above the individual themselves.
Mhm.
That doesn't make sense. So that was another why, right? Another thing that was like, oh, this doesn't make sense. That was another brick that I pulled out. I was like, yeah,
But you
it's
have to
falling
own
apart.
that. You have to own that yourself, don't you? Like that's where you were at that time. I was going to say that's who you were, but that's a little dicey. And it's
Mhm.
yours. Like you preached and they listened. It's
Mhm.
yours.
Absolutely.
That could be tough,
Absolutely.
eh? That could be very
Yeah,
hard.
it is. It is, but it also goes back to me learning how to have deep compassion for myself, because I
Yes.
was doing the best
Yes.
I could at the time. And my heart was pure in the sense that I never meant anyone harm. I sincerely didn't. I
Mhm.
always wanted the best for people. So as much as there are the cringe of like, ugh, I'm also holding that in duality with the compassion I have for that version of me.
You said that I apologized for potentially taking person down a road which was directed towards Christianity. The inference being that Christianity is not good for people.
Mm.
So, given your druthers or someone else's druthers, if they came to you and they said, I'm a Christian, I'm a devoted Christian, it's not really working for me, I'm full of fear, I'm full of anger, would you say, don't be a Christian?
No, no, I wouldn't say don't be a Christian. I would say start asking yourself the hard questions and be willing to sit with the discomfort of where it leads. Because the reality is that I cannot tell anyone their journey, that religion is good or bad for them, that, I can't, like, I'm not going to direct them. I don't, I think there is a lot of good that can come from Christianity and churches. For instance, when I got back into church when I was very young, I needed it. I needed something. It was an on ramp to me starting to heal parts of me that felt completely and utterly worthless. So there was good in it. I think what happens though is we get caught up in all of the pillars of beliefs, and then we intertwine it and we get confused about who we can't separate ourselves from it. And I think that's where the damage comes, is because nothing is ever like, who am I apart from this? Are these beliefs that I want to believe, that I think truly support me, or are they programmed in and conditioned in? And so I just believe them because they create safety and certainty specifically for me about an afterlife, right? For me, it was like, well, I mean, even if my life is shit, at least I know I'm going to heaven. At least I got that, right? Like, that is, when you truly believe that, that is a deep place of safety and certainty. You don't want to give that up, right? Like, that, to give that up is like, it is literally like ripping parts of you out. It feels so unsafe and so scary. I mean, that was the road I chose to walk. But my agenda would never be with someone, I'm a Christian, I'm struggling, like, oh, we'll stop being a Christian. It's more of, can you start asking questions about what you believe and why you believe it, how it truly does help you, support you, or how it hurts you, and get radically honest and then see where it leads.
As a Jew, we don't really have this thing of you're going to go to hell. Not really. There's discussion around the concept of Gehenna being a very, very bad place. But really, you're not going to really find a Torah class on someone sitting down as here's Shemayim, here's heaven, and here's Gehenna. And if you do this, you're going to have, it's not really. We're a bit healthier that way. My God, what is it like to have that hanging over you? The potential of going to the hot cauldrons of hell, where they say that you may end up in a big pot of, boiling sperm. Like, what is that? No, I heard that once. It's crazy.
I have never heard that before.
I know. Did you have that fear of going to hell?
Never until I was deconstructing. Never. Yeah. So
Yeah,
basically,
walk me through that.
Yeah. So, I mean, I was definitely raised in like not only heaven and hell, but the rapture, right? Like Jesus is going to come back. We'll probably see it in our lifetime. And a bunch of people are going to just fucking disappear because, they'll be taken up to heaven with Jesus. And then it'll be, I mean, this is from a very young age when that's ingrained in you,
Like little
believe
people? Little people
yeah.
hear this?
Yeah. Yeah. So it's like, I didn't believe in Santa Claus because my parents thought, no, this is about Jesus. We're not going to bring Santa Claus into it. So I never had that belief and had that devastation finding out Santa Claus wasn't real. But if you did believe in Santa Claus ever, anybody who did believe in Santa Claus, because this is more relatable, I think, and you really believed it, a lot of children have they remember when they found out Santa Claus wasn't real. And it was devastating for them, right? So now you need to take that type of devastation, but now you need to add into it, go all the way up. You believe in Santa Claus, but you believe his ass is real until you're 38 years old. And now you're finding out you've got that many years of conditioning, right? So heaven, hell, 37, 38 years of my life of just absolutely, of course, this is real. And the certainty of I believe in Jesus and that Jesus died for my sins, like everything I do wrong. So I don't have to be a perfect person. Sounds like a lot of love right there. And so because of that, I get to go to heaven. So when I'm deconstructing and I start choosing to ask all these questions and realizing, oh my God, this is a lot of programming and I don't actually know how these beliefs do support me, because now I'm realizing on my own, these beliefs sound like love and yet they're actually fear. They're fear-based beliefs. They're masked in all of this love. I took an entire year of my life to deconstruct, just by myself. It was me, nobody else. And it was scary as fuck. And for a year, it was at least a good year straight. Every day I thought, if I'm wrong, I'm going to go to hell. If I deconstruct and I walk away from Christianity, I walk away from believing Jesus as my savior, and I'm wrong, I could die any day and I am going to burn in hell. That seems outrageous for people who never had that deep belief inside of them, but it was so real to me. And it was so fucking scary. I was on this ship of Christianity with all my people in ministry and in the church. And first I step down from ministry, then I walk away from church as a whole, and then I'm deconstructing all alone. I'm jumping into an ocean. I don't know what I'm landing on. There's no safety net. There's no lifeboat. There's no other religion I'm going to. And now I feel safe. I feel good again. And I'll go to heaven with this religion. That's not what was happening. I was literally choosing to walk away from all of it, not knowing what would happen on the other side, not having any support. But I couldn't unsee what I had seen. And so for me, the cost was worth it because I wanted to know all of the things about myself. I wanted to get to know the reality of who I was as a person apart from this programming, what I believed apart from this. What was it all? And so as painful as it was, I wouldn't know the me I know now. She was covered under all of it, right? When I tell people, you got to get to know you, you are actually literally love. Your nature is love. You are magnetic as fuck. You naturally are authentic. All of these things, they were already in existence in your soul and as you came out, as you were birthed. The only reason that you're not those things, desirable, any of the things you can think of that you want to be confident, The only reason that you're not those things is because all of the shit on top of you, all of the programming, all of the conditioning, all of the lies, all of the unsupportive beliefs that have just been pounded on you your entire life. If you can start peeling back those layers, if you can start deconstructing, questioning, and asking better questions, you will get to the real you. And when you get to the real you, you will fall in love with that you. And that is worth the cost of all of it. I wouldn't go back. If anybody gave me billions of dollars, I would not go back.
Trying the silence thing again. It's great what you're saying. Bekha, what did the abyss look? What did the abyss look like? Oh, what did it feel like? And when you actually went over the wall and you found love, what was that like? What did that look like?
The abyss felt like a slow death. Felt like it felt like loneliness that I can't put words around. And finding love, finding myself, it was like coming home.
Yeah.
It was like coming home to a home that I had always known, but I didn't know was right here. Like I was the one I was looking for. I was the one. And that sounds so beautiful. And yet the reality is it's so fucking hard in the face of everyone else thinking you're just being a selfish bitch, or you're just trying to walk away from Christianity so you can just be a wild sinner and not have to feel guilty. Like the accusations and the judgments and the things that people think even close to you. I'm not going to sit here and lie to you all and act like, oh, like it's an easy road. Don't worry, like just get past it and you'll make it. Like this is not for, they say entrepreneurship, for instance, is not for the faint of heart. Deconstructing and finding yourself, that is not for the faint of heart, because the majority of people will not do it because of what it costs. And I get it. So I have no judgment toward people who will not dissect and will not go deep and will not, I have no judgment. And also, I will never lie about the freedom and the love and the peace that it brings, that you can't get any other way.
Are you a nice kid?
Am I a nice kid?
Like when you found out who you are, did you say, yeah, I like me?
Yeah.
Yeah?
I like me. Yeah, I like me a lot, actually.
Well, what do you like?
I like so many parts of me. So I like the quirky side of me. I'm very goofy and playful. And I think that was there still before. Some of these parts of me were already there and I did like them a little, but I've let myself embrace them even more. Embrace and also appreciate them even more. Right. So like there's a deeper level. And then some parts that I'm going to name, they weren't allowed to be there. And so I've had to find them and allow them, unshame them, and then fall in love with them. And
like
so
you couldn't be a goofy pastor, no? Right?
yeah, I was actually there was like quirkiness, goofiness to me back then for sure still. I like the empath in me, the part of me that can connect to humans and feel so much pain and also so much love. Even in the discomfort of the pain, like I love the part of me that can just be totally vulnerable and emotional and be okay with it. I love the sexual part of me, the part of me that was oppressed and taught to just fit in this box of what it looked like and what it looks like for women to be sexual. I love the emotional intelligent side of me, the side that like loves to look into the depths. Like I love to look into the depths, and it's not always easy what you find there, but I want to know more. I want to understand more. I love human connection, the relational aspect of things. Like I can't get enough of it. And so I love the part of me that stands up for herself. The part of me that doesn't enable people anymore. The part of me that is assertive, the part of me that has motherfucking boundaries like a boss and is not, does not walk away from putting up those boundaries feeling bad about myself, feeling like I should have done differently. I love the version of me that stands up for me. I was never defended my whole life. And I had to decide I'm going to defend myself. And that was the only way it happened when I was a teenager. But the way I defended myself back then came from such a place of fear and guardedness and like, I'll get you before you get me, that type of energy. And now the version of me that defends myself is so chill. She's just like so confident and so at ease and doesn't feel like she has to blow up or like lose her mind or prove a point. I did this with my fingers because I'm like pretending to type because that's where people will blast me on like social or something. And it's like, I don't have to prove anything. And also I can defend myself in a way that feels really good, and even kind, and also badass all at the same time.
Yeah, I caught that. How deeply will you go? How long can you look in someone's eyes?
I've never set a timer. But
Yes, I mean like that. Like, that point, and I use that example of looking someone's eyes because that's kind of a decent gauge. If I look really deeply into your eyes, especially you don't know me, right? 5 seconds in, 10 seconds, we're okay. 15 seconds, 20 seconds in, I start to see something different. And there's a side of me which gets a little bit scared. 30 seconds, 45 seconds, I might get really scared because you might really be seeing me.
Yeah.
So how much do you allow people to see you?
That's a great question. I think it depends on the person, right? I think that it's important to guard your energy and it's important to be cautious about who you allow in, because if you're allowing them in to see you deeply, like you're opening up your kind of heart and soul to also give them permission to like speak into your life or maybe have work. So, and maybe we're talking about two different things, but I try to show up as authentically as I can so people can get a feel for the real me. And that's something I've always done. Even when I was younger, one of the most common comments that I would get is like, you're so real. You're so real.
Yeah.
And so I always tried to do that, but you can also only be as real as you know yourself. So that's why that's shifted so much. But now the people who I'm very close to, they see all of me. I don't hold back. And I don't want them to either, right? You have to have people who there's just like, that's it. They see it all. Like there's no shame and they're not, and they don't shame you, right? There's no shame on either parts. It's like, there's no judgment. Just like you can be fully you and I can be fully me and I can see into the depths of their soul and even the uglies, right? Because we all have like the uglies inside of us. You can see that part of them. You can see that and love them in it, right? That you can love them in the depths of their soul and love their humanity. And then just the parts of them that are just still learning how to be human.
So when I'm in a room with people and I allow myself to be myself, and I have to be conscious of that quite often, and I'll see people roll their eyes as though, well, he's a goof or he's an idiot. Or now with politics, I'm really centrist left, and a lot of my community is very right wing, and they're really going at me. They're attacking me a lot, but I'm committed to being who I am in the context of what we're living through now.
Yeah.
How do you deal with the rolling eyes?
People fear what they don't understand. Why are they rolling their eyes? They're rolling their eyes in judgment. Why are they judging? They're judging to the degree they judge themselves.
Yes.
I think that it doesn't mean I'm still not human. And there are times when I feel a little thing inside me, like, what the fuck? Like, that's rude, or I'm annoyed or whatever. But overall, on a consistent basis, I really just do not allow it to bother me. I am a big personality. I speak my mind. I have some views that are definitely not traditional and also not widely accepted, even in society.
Yeah.
So you gotta get comfortable. You gotta learn to get comfortable with the discomfort of people rejecting you, of people thinking ill of you. I'm not here for everyone. And I think that's what has to really land is like, none of us are here for everyone on this earth. And for me, one of the deepest things I want is an impact. I want to live a life of fulfillment. And a big part of the fulfillment is making an impact. And the reality is, if you want to make an impact in the world, getting in touch with the truest version of you and living as that true version is the most profound way to make an impact. It is. Now, are you going to repel a lot of people with your authentic self? Hell yeah, you are. but you're going to magnetize people to you in a way that lights their souls on fire. You're going to be able to inspire the types of people who are drawn to you in a way that other people can't. Like your story and your authentic living and your unapologetic expression is going to touch the hearts and minds of the people for you in such a powerful way versus like, oh, let me just try to like make sure everybody's okay with me. Oh, I didn't mean to like, oh, well, let me
Yes.
tell you why. I mean, no, it's just like, no, this is who I am. This is how I be. This is how I show up. And I like me. And I made peace with me. Making peace with yourself. God, what a gift.
You got vulva, girl.
I love this. This is it.
You got vulva. You do. You got vulva.
We're going to use
it's gonna go worldwide, I'm sure. Bekha Slider, what is sexuality?
Sexuality. That's such an interesting question. So many different answers to describe that. I think sexuality is an innate part of being a human. So I'll start with that. Obviously, one of the core reasons for us to reproduce, and also expression. So much pleasure to be had. To me, sexuality coincides with pleasure. And so I use the terms together, but I don't always mean actually just like actual erotic zone pleasure, because the reality is that I talk about turn on a lot. And yes, of course, turn on can feel very like it can be erotic, and also it can just be turn on for life. So I think for me, sexual expression is in the way I show up and the energy that I have and how I'm viewing myself, how I'm showing up, even in confidence. Like visibility to me is inherently sexual. You're exposing parts of you. You're exposing ways of being and showing up. Like there is a sexuality to it. And again, this is kind of a paradigm shift of sexuality, because we're often used to thinking of it very much like in a two-dimensional way. This is it. This is what it is. This is what it means. And I just think it's so much more than that. And also, sexuality is something that needs to be unshamed. So much more. I mean, you think about like the divorce, and you think about like the top two things people's reasons get divorced. They're like, okay, it's for sex reasons or it's for money reasons. Okay, that's huge. People are getting divorced over sex stuff, over not having sex or over not being happy. But like, that's a whole angle of being human that people aren't experiencing fulfillment in, right? And yet we make it taboo still. It's like, oh, this is one of the number one causes of divorce, but like, let's not talk about sex. Let's keep it in a box. It needs to look this certain way to be acceptable. Women need to act this certain way, especially women, right? Like there's so many things around sexuality that are just wildly unhelpful, wildly unsupportive. And that's one thing that I get riled up about and want to like dismantle all of the shame around it, all of the bullshit, all of it, because it's like when people are more in touch with their sexuality in a really healthy way, that isn't tied into shame, that isn't tied into like trying to prove or having to have a thing. Like, it's like, no, they're just like really at peace with themselves. They really love and embrace and embody their sexuality in their unique way. Everybody's different. It translates into their turn on for life. It translates into their turn on energy for the world around them, the people around them, the things that they put their time and energy and soul into. So to me, it's all connected. You cannot put sexuality over here in a box and be like, oh, it's just this thing. No, it's inherently part of who we are, in our DNA, in our cells, in our soul, all of it. It's all immersed. It's all part of it. And so I think it's figuring out, how do we more authentically incorporate that into our daily living, and what does that look like?
And what is exciting to you about showing your eros, the erotic side to you, or the naked side to you? What's really fantastic about that? Because that's what you do, right? You do that.
I do. I have an OnlyFans.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that once I walked away from Christianity and unshamed the whole sexual side of me, I allowed myself to be really in touch with like, I like being sexually expressive.
Yes.
Not everyone does, even when they're being authentic. It's not like a strong thing for them per se, and that's okay. But like for me, I like it. Even when and I didn't mention this, but from about 15 to 19 years old, I had walked away from the church, walked away from Christianity. Even during that time, I felt more still suppressed, but more connected to my sexuality and just like, oh my God, I love dressing sexy and feeling sexy and all the things. And it's like, once I unshamed it, it was like, I want to be unapologetically sexy, dress unapologetically sexy, like show up in a way that feels true to me. And so when it comes to the OnlyFans thing, I'm like, man, I don't want to, even though I love sexuality and sex, I am not trying to go out and just like find that fulfillment through a new person every week. Like, I just don't have any desire for that. So it's like, how can I lean into being sexually expressive in a way that feels like fun and play and creativity? And I'm like, oh my God, this is it. I'm going to do it. OnlyFans. And again, here we go. Right. So just because I had already walked away from Christianity and deconstructed all of that and had all that judgment, this is a whole new level of inviting judgment. Because now I'm like, oh yeah, I'm a coach and a speaker. Oh, and I get naked on OnlyFans. And it's like, come on, world. Come judge me, because I knew it was coming, right? Even if people aren't Christians, there's still a societal standard of what is acceptable for women and what it means to allow yourself to show your body to anyone else. So for me, had to deal with all that, but the fun, I've only been doing it now like 4 months. It's fun. It's play. I enjoy it. I love the relational side of it because there's more to it than just actually like, here I am, I'm naked on OnlyFans. Like it's kind of like a playground for me, honestly. I don't know how else to say it. That would probably be the
No,
best
it's
way
a
to
good way.
describe
It's a
it.
good way of saying. And do you like your body?
I do. Yeah. You know what's funny is I had done a lot of work around loving myself, but loving my body as well after deconstructing. And there were still parts though that it was just like, oh, I don't necessarily love this part or this part. And being on OnlyFans and like there's a vulnerability about that. Like here it is, like all the parts of me. So let me give you some examples. So I have, even though like I have a slim body, I still have loads of stretch marks on my inner thighs, on my ass, like from giving birth, from having a baby and gaining 50 pounds on my first child. I have like quite a bit of cellulite for being a skinny girl. I'm just like, what is happening here? Because I feel, but I think it's just what it is. I have loads of cellulite. I have a massive scar on my lower left ankle. I 10 years ago was T-boned by a car. I was on a bicycle and I got T-boned by a car going 40 miles an hour, and the bone came out of my leg. And so like, it's just like this massive scar on my lower left ankle area. It looks gnarly. So those are like 3 things right off the bat that I'm like, I don't really like about, like, I feel insecurity about them. Right. Well, you can't hide that shit when you're like, here I am. Like,
It's there.
And what's wild is I have had no one ever comment and say like, oh, like that, your ass has too much cellulite, or you look at the stretch marks, or like, and of course people are like, yeah, they're looking at other stuff. Yeah, but there's still the potential of that judgment. And so what's happened is all of the affirmation I've had of people like, oh my God, this is amazing. That's amazing. It's, and not that the validation is going to last if it only comes from external. That's important to note. But it can be very helpful at combining that with your own work of loving yourself to be like, yes, if they can believe it, I can believe it. It's that phrase, people say, I'm going to love you until you love yourself. There's some truth to that. If the person loving themselves is actually doing the work to love themselves, it can be very helpful to have that. Ultimately, though, the work has to be done on an individual level, because now, right? So now I've been 4 months in. I do feel more like, damn, like it doesn't really matter about these things and these things.
Cool.
I could have someone today drop in my DMs and say like all that judgment to me, right? And then where am I? Is that going to spiral me back down? Like, oh God, these things about my body. And I would say, I can't tell you exactly because I'm not in that moment, but I would say that no, it probably will not. If anything, it'll be like, well, I'm just not for you then. I think that like I'm getting to the place where I'm like, no body is perfect. We all have these things. And truly, like even the scar on my leg, it's a story. It's part of me. My stretch marks, they're a story. Like I had a baby. Like I don't know what story the cellulite has, but
It's got some story. I'll tell you that one. Bekha, have you ever had a partner kiss or embrace your scar?
Yeah, actually, yes. And it is, one of the most beautiful, kindest
Yeah.
things.
Yeah.
I didn't realize how much that meant to me until I was in a store with my ex-husband's aunt, and I was telling her about, it was the first time I was telling her about the scar and about the accident I had. It had been several years prior. And she's like, "Oh, let me see." And I showed her and I lifted up my leg and she grabbed it and like she rubbed it and then she kissed it.
Did
And
she?
I was just like, "Oh," and it felt like so much acceptance, so much
Right.
love of something that I had felt so insecure about. And so since then, I've had like, I think two different men over the course of several years, like two different men have done that to me when they've like they're just like embracing it. It's not a problem. It's like actually like, "Oh, I love this part of your story, almost like this part of your journey, this part, like, yeah, I'm going to love that too." And
Nicely said. Yes.
that's fucking beautiful. Yeah. Do you have a scar or something that you've had this happen to? Because the fact that you even asked that question is just incredible.
I would say I still have some body dysmorphia,
Yeah.
and I'm 64, so I've got a belly, and
Yeah.
and I used to love getting naked. I just would love it, and I would feel so comfortable. I remember the first time I got naked with a young woman, and I just felt completely at home. As I've gotten older, I've gotten a little heavier and not entirely happy with how I look naked. But I've been with some women who have been very generous of spirit, just very generous of spirit. Have you ever embraced someone's scar?
Yeah. Hmm. Yep. Yeah. And it's funny how much I'm so glad we're talking about this because this is something that's never really talked about. But um, people often, I can't speak for everyone with scars, but people often with scars, what I have found is that they do want to share the story. They
Mhm.
do, like, instead of acting like, "Oh, I want to act like it doesn't exist and like it's uncomfortable and I don't want to make them uncomfortable." It's usually the opposite that creates the most comfort. Because when you actually address it and are like, "Oh, what's the story behind that?" and let them share, like, boom, if there was any elephant in the room on their behalf of feeling insecure, it's gone. So, one example is there is a guy who I met in Vegas. He was the Uber driver for me and my friend, and we ended up using him several times. My friend and I are both coaches, and so he's talking about relational issues he had, and we're like helping coach him. He has a very large scar down his face right here. It's deep too. So I didn't say anything right away. But after we had the conversation going for a while, whatever, I was like, "Hey, so tell me about your scar." And he looked at me and he said, "Thank you for asking that. Thank you for saying that." He said, "I have been talking to a woman for like, I think 3 months. He's been talking, like sort of dating, not committed yet." And he said, "She has never asked me about my scar."
Yes.
And it's so weird that she would never ask me about something so like in your face, profound. Obviously, something happened. So he had shared that he actually was dropped on his head as a baby, like an infant right out of his mother's womb. And so it's just like this gnarly scar, but it's a story, right? And so I could tell just in that moment by his response that like just sharing, just having the ability to share and someone cares enough to know, that alone is so healing. It's so comforting. It feels like love. It doesn't feel like love is not like, "Oh, I just won't talk about it so you don't feel uncomfortable." No, bitch, I feel uncomfortable because you won't talk about it because it's a part of my life and my story, and now it's awkward.
Yes. But have you kissed a scar?
Have I kissed a scar? I'm trying to think. I didn't kiss his scar. Just
No,
I
no,
didn't
he's an Uber driver.
Well, I'm still in contact with him actually.
Yeah.
I'll probably see him in April. Um, I'm trying to think of anybody who I knew who has a large scar.
But you would.
But I would. Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay.
Absolutely. 100%. Yeah.
Becca, just a few questions, and then I have a poem that AI has written about you, and I'm going to read it to you. Um, what's your greatest fear?
Hmm. My greatest fear would be never living up to my potential, which is kind of funny because I feel like it's actually ridiculous. But I think that's it. Like never living up to all of like the dreams and like the things I can see, the vision I have for my future, the way I can hold myself, that future version of myself. And I'm like, yes, that's who I am. That's who I'm choosing to be. I'm going to show up every day and the reality starts shifting. And that's already happening. But And when I say potential, I'll put it in even clearer words. Not making the impact that I know I'm here to make in this world. That's my biggest fear.
But you feel you're on the road to do so.
I do. Yeah.
So if you died, God forbid, tomorrow, and I ask this question all the time. I've asked myself, I've had 3 heart attacks, and I always ask myself when I'm in ICU, if I die, do I feel as though I've accomplished something great? Am I happy with what I've done in life? And thank God, at least by the 3rd heart attack, I said yes. The first 2, maybe not so much. But would you say yes, if God forbid tomorrow was your last day? Have you done a good job? Have you had a good life?
Yeah. Yeah. I have. I mean, I would definitely not want it to be tomorrow because there's so many things you want to do. But
A lot to do, right? Yes.
I feel like just the fact that just the transformation that I've had over the course of the last several years, just choosing so many hard things that that legacy, leaving that legacy to my kids and to the people who have known my story and know about me and are friends with me, close to me, whoever it is who has been inspired by it, to walk away from the safety net of Christianity, to deconstruct marriage and decide, I'm walking away from this too, in the face of all that judgment, to deconstruct sexuality and unshame that and decide not only was I going to embrace my wildly sexual side, but I am going to be part of a movement that's literally dismantling the bullshit stories that tell us we can't be sexual and respected. We can't be sexual and leaders as women. Even if I died tomorrow, those were things, staples that nobody can take away from me that made an impact. And I would be very grateful with that.
Do you see the illumination coming from you? Do you see it?
Yeah, I do. So I'm 43. So I get a lot of people telling me you don't look that age. You look so much younger. And they're always asking me how do you look so young? How do you look so young? And I tell them the reality is this, because I didn't have people say this to me until maybe 3 to 4 years ago is when it started.
Yeah.
And I said, yes, I take care of myself on a physical level. Obviously, that does matter. And also, the reality is that it's my energy. It's the youthful energy I have. It's the way I've loved myself. I tell them, it's me choosing me. It's because I went back home to me. It's because I do inner work and I don't let the bullshit stories in my head run my life. So I don't have all this added stress on me on a daily basis because I know how to interrupt the thoughts. I know how to get myself back on the journey I came here for. I know how to live in curiosity over judgment. Those are the things that literally shift your entire aura. And that is where I have to give the evidence to of looking younger than I am.
It's not even the younger part, because I'm somewhat ageless in the way I see people, but it's the illumination. You're bright. There's a shine coming off of you, and I can see it through Zoom or through Restream. It's really powerful.
Thank you.
It's very, very powerful, like a goddess almost. Very, very, yeah, maybe not that much, but last question. Tell me something positive about me that you see, and something you see that I need to work on.
Positive is very easy. You have an amazing gift of finding the pieces of the stories that need to be highlighted in a way that brings exposure that as a person who's a guest, I didn't even know could exist, that needed to be there. You hold so much space. You are just this incredible space holder. When we first started, as soon as you hit record and you started talking to me, I immediately felt like I was going to cry. That's not normal for me. Not to say I don't cry a lot. It's not normal for me to have a guest. So when I'm trying to be a guest on a place where it's I feel like I could just cry. Your energy is palpable. And what that energy is, it feels like just this incredible cocoon of love and vulnerability. And it's you just welcome me into it. And that, it's a gift. It's like magic, Avrum. It's like magic.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. You even said my name correctly.
No.
What do I have to work on?
Work on? Based on our conversation today, I would say working on loving all the parts of you physically. Yeah. Learning.
Can one do that? Can one do that?
Absolutely. It's it's again, I use that word all the time, deconstructing, but the questions is asking the questions and you don't have to, it's not you're denying the fact that maybe you want to change certain things that are in your power to change, right? It's not saying you're not going to not be real with reality of where you're at. Like, oh, I would like change this. And also, how can I be so appreciative of these parts of me? How can I love them? How can I embrace them? Because what we truly want when it comes to like the physical, we want to be desired holistically. And so when we are saying, well, this isn't desirable, how can we expect someone else to desire that when we already are saying something about it to be true? We're already making an absolute, well, this isn't desirable. Of course, we're magnetizing someone or the lack of someone not desiring it, right? So it starts with us just being like, no, how are ways that I can desire myself in all of these parts of me?
I've learned a lot from you. Thank you. I really have. You're a fine teacher. This is an AI poem. I've been dabbling with AI for a while now, and it's called Ode to Bekha. Yeah. Bekha Slider with courage untold. Step from the pulpit, her story unfolds. A life once bound by doctrines and creed, she sought her own truth, her soul freed. Through scriptures and sermons her spirit had bled, fighting for faith when the heart felt misled. But the chains of the past were too heavy to bear, so she laid them down to breathe the fresh air. Deconstructing the walls that once held her tight, she shed the old fears, embraced the new light. From trembling hands to a heart now so bold, she learned to love deeply and no longer uphold. A life of pretense, of roles she had played, she walked through the fire, no longer afraid. In the cracks of the past, she found her own space, a woman reborn, full of love and full of grace. Now she dances with freedom unchained and true, loving the world and herself anew. No longer bound by the weight of the past, Bekha Slider found peace at last.
Oh my God.
I know. I've been doing a lot of this with a lot of people, and they asked me to send it to them.
Please.
I will send it to you. Like, what did you think when I read it to you?
It was like perfect. I mean, it was just perfect.
I know. Stunning, right? Stunning.
Yeah.
I know. And I fed into AI. Are you dabbling with AI?
Yeah.
Okay, good. So I fed in stuff about you, probably the introduction that I used today, which was yours, quite frankly. I think you wrote it, and this is what it spit out.
That's amazing.
It's fucking unbelievable.
Also, the rhyming, because not all poems rhyme, so I didn't necessarily expect it to rhyme. And I'm like, boom, boom. I'm like, damn, this is lit.
I'm so happy you like it. Listen, if people want to use your coaching skills, you as a coach or what have you, I know that there's a lead up to it that has to be the right fit and so on and so forth. Where can they get in touch with you, Bekha?
Yeah, the best way to get in touch with me is going to be on Instagram or Facebook, honestly, in my DMs. You can email me too, but like, honestly, the DMs I check more often. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you want people to go and see your pictures? Do you want that?
Oh yeah, sure.
So where would they go to see you naked?
On OnlyFans, it's my name on OnlyFans. It's literally like type in my name. I don't do anything anonymously. It's all me. It's like, because that was one thing I had to battle with, was like, ooh, do I do it? And I'm just like, no, it's on brand for me. It's on brand. Like, sexual liberation is on brand, so I'm not going to hide it. And I had conversations with all my kids. They're 19, 18, 13 beforehand, so they all know. So it feels really good to not have any secrets, if you know what I mean. Like, it just feels good to just be me across all boards, from me in all aspects, to be the brand. So yeah, it's literally my name. There's no other Bekha Slider on Facebook or Instagram. I don't think there's another Bekha Slider spelled my way, so I'm pretty easy to find.
Like, I'm very inspired. You'll probably see me naked everywhere in the next few months.
I love it.
Bekha Slider, thank you so much for being my guest. I enjoyed it so much.
Oh, thank you.
You were wonderful. You were terrific. Really.
You were wonderful. This is incredible. You're an amazing host.
I appreciate
Very gifted.
Thank you. And ladies and gentlemen, as I said at the top of the interview, take out of this interview what you can find. And there's a lot to do to discover, in particular, how one can overcome their fears and how they can come to a place of loving themselves, and then loving humankind. There's a lot there, and we can learn from that. I am someone who struggles a lot with the hatred in the world, with the anti-Semitism in the world. And I am just convinced beyond a shadow of a doubt that in some ways we can all become Bekha Sliders, where we can embrace ourselves and love ourselves and be honest and authentic, because it's inside of us. It's there. Now, sometimes the layers are so incredibly thick that you have to blast them out of there, but it can be done for most, for most. So please listen to this interview carefully. Take out of it what you can, share it with others, and just let's make this world fucking rock, man. Let's just make it the beautiful gem that it has the ability to be. And until then, as we say in Yiddish, sei gesund, which means go in health, do svidanya, which is Russian for until we see you again. Give us a goodbye, Bekha. Say something goodbye.
Goodbye, Bekha.
Goodbye, Bekha. Okay, folks, we'll see you soon. Thank you so much.